Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Albert Rowe gripped the worn leather briefcase, his knuckles white, as he navigated through the bustling halls of Bayfield Central High. Students darted around him, their energy a stark contrast to the weight in his chest. At 38, he had mastered the art of commanding respect without raising his voice, a skill that served him well both in the classroom and at the endless social functions his wife dragged him to. "Mr. Rowe," a sophomore waved, nearly dropping her textbook. "Will you tell us about the Bayfield Tea Party today?" "That's next week's lesson, Sarah," he replied, managing a genuine smile despite his exhaustion. The previous night's charity gala had run late, another of Vanessa's networking events where he played the role of the supportive spouse. His classroom stood as a testament to his passion. Maps of colonial Bayfield adorned the walls, alongside preserved documents he had acquired through years of careful collecting. A letter from John Adams to his wife Abigail, authenticated and framed, held pride of place above his desk. The irony wasn't lost on him that while he taught about revolutions and betrayals from centuries ago, his own life was built on foundations he'd never thought to question. The final bell rang, and Albert settled behind his desk, watching as his students filed out. He pulled out a stack of essays on the American Revolution, red pen poised to grade, when his phone buzzed. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. "Albert, darling." Her voice carried that particular tone she reserved for demands disguised as requests. "The Thompsons are hosting a dinner party tonight. Raymond's showcasing his new development project." Albert's jaw tightened at the mention of Raymond Fowler. The man's presence at their social events had grown more frequent over the past year. "I have papers to grade, Vanessa." "These connections matter, Albert. Your father's name still carries weight in Bayfield society, even if the money doesn't." The subtle dig was classic Vanessa, a reminder of the disparity in their financial situations. "Fine," he agreed, knowing resistance would only lead to an argument he didn't have the energy for. "What time?" "7 sharp. Wear the navy Armani I bought you. The old suits make you look like what you are." The line went dead before he could respond. Albert stared at his phone, remembering their first meeting 8 years ago. He had been giving a speech about preserving Bayfield's architectural heritage at the Historical Society's annual gala. Vanessa had approached afterward, her interest seemingly genuine, her questions thoughtful. Now he wondered if she had rehearsed them beforehand. The memory shifted to their wedding day. Mary Ann Blackwell, his mother-in-law, had cornered him at the reception, champagne glass in hand. "You're not what I expected for Vanessa," she'd said, her smile sharp as a razor. "But I suppose every family needs its intellectual." A knock at his classroom door interrupted his thoughts. Naomi Rowe, his younger sister, stood in the doorway, her expression troubled. "Got a minute, big brother?" Naomi had inherited their mother's direct nature, along with her auburn hair. She worked as a corporate lawyer, her expertise in trust law making her particularly valuable to old Bayfield families trying to protect their legacies. "Always for you, Naomi." Albert cleared space on his desk, noting the thick folder under her arm. "What's wrong?" "It's about Vanessa." Naomi placed the folder between them. "She's been making inquiries about the family trust documents, specifically about Dad's estate." Albert frowned. "She knows the house is protected by heritage laws. We can't sell or develop it." "That's just it." Naomi leaned forward, lowering her voice despite the empty classroom. "She's been meeting with Heritage Board members, pushing for reclassification of certain historical properties. And Albert, she's not doing it alone." "What do you mean?" "Raymond Fowler's firm is involved. They've successfully had 3 historical properties reclassified in the past year, all of them demolished within months." Albert's hand curled into a fist under the desk. "You're implying my wife is trying to get her hands on our family home." "I'm not implying anything. I'm showing you evidence." Naomi opened the folder, spreading out documents. "These are meeting minutes, property applications, private emails." "How did you get these?" "I have my sources." Naomi met his gaze steadily. "Albert, There's more. Vanessa's beam, click of heels on tile, silenced her. Vanessa stood in the doorway, elegant in a tailored Channel suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Naomi, what a surprise. Discussing more conspiracy theories about me. Just catching up with my brother, Vanessa. Naomi gathered her documents smoothly. I'll see you tonight at the Thompsons. Oh, didn't Albert tell you? It's an intimate gathering. Couples only. Vanessa's smile didn't waver as Naomi retreated, but her eyes followed her sister-in-law until she disappeared down the hall. You didn't mention it was couples only, Albert said. Didn't I? Must have slipped my mind. Vanessa perched on the edge of his desk, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. Your sister needs to be careful. All these investigations into my business dealings. People might think she's becoming obsessed. She's protecting our family's interests. And what exactly do you think needs protecting? Vanessa's voice hardened slightly. I've only ever worked to elevate the Roe name. To make it mean something again beyond dusty museums and academic lectures. Albert stood, gathering his papers. The Roe name meant something long before you took it. Vanessa, my father. Your father is dying in that mausoleum he calls a home. Vanessa interrupted, clinging to portraits of dead ancestors while the world moves on. Her words cut like ice. I'm trying to build a legacy that actually matters in today's Bayfield. As they drove home separately, Vanessa in her Mercedes, Albert in his Honda, he couldn't shake Naomi's warnings. The folder she tried to show him nagged at his thoughts, and Vanessa's dismissal of his family's heritage struck deeper than usual. At home, Albert retreated to his study while Vanessa prepared for the dinner party. The room was his sanctuary, filled with books and historical documents he had collected over years of teaching. He sat at his desk, attempting to focus on grading papers, but Vanessa's voice drifted through the heating vent, unusually animated. Mother, you don't understand. Everything's proceeding exactly as planned. Albert froze, pen hovering over an essay about the American Revolution. Why keep up this charade? Marianne's voice crackled through the phone. That pathetic excuse for a husband. He's living off your success while those 3 wonderful children. All from your tall ex-boyfriend. You've been with Raymond since your wedding night. Vanessa's laugh, cold and clear, shattered the last remnants of Albert's world. Mom, his family's dying heritage makes me untouchable in society. Once his sick father dies, the $1 million estate is mine. The red pen snapped in Albert's grip, ink staining his fingers like blood. 8 years of marriage, 3 children he believed were his own. Every moment, every memory, tainted by lies. In that instant, Albert Roe, the mild-mannered history teacher, the patient husband, the devoted father, felt something fundamental shift within him. The ruthlessness that had helped his ancestors build Bayfield, the steel spine that had kept the Roe name relevant for generations, awakened in his blood. Vanessa's laugh echoed again through the vent, but Albert no longer heard it. He was already planning, his mind racing through options with cold precision. She thought she had married a pushover, a convenient stepping stone to social status. She was about to learn that the Roe family hadn't survived centuries in Bayfield society by being weak. Opening his laptop, Albert began his research, not into historical events this time, but into his wife's business dealings, her connections, her weaknesses. If Vanessa wanted to play with heritage and legacy, he would teach her a lesson about the true meaning of both. The dinner party at the Thompsons could wait. Albert Roe had more important matters to attend to, like dismantling the elaborate lie his marriage had become, piece by carefully documented piece. The revelation about his children struck Albert like a physical blow, but he remained seated, his training as a historian taking over. Historians dealt in facts, in documentation, in verifiable truth. Right now, he needed all 3. His mind raced through memories, cataloging details he had dismissed over the years. Eva's tall stature, so much taller than both Roe and Blackwell family members. John's natural athletic ability, mirroring Raymond Fowler's famous college basketball career. Sadie's blonde hair, several shades lighter than Vanessa's carefully maintained color. Albert pulled open his desk drawer, removing a manila envelope he had kept sealed for months. Inside lay the results of a DNA test he'd conducted during what Vanessa believed was a routine medical checkup. He had ordered it after noticing discrepancies in the children's medical histories, a nagging doubt he had forced himself to ignore. The paper trembled slightly in his hands as he read the conclusion again. The alleged father cannot be the biological father of the tested children. This is established with 99.99% certainty. Dad? Eva's voice at his study door made him jump. At 13, she was already showing signs of the beauty that had made Raymond Fowler a campus legend. Are you coming to dinner? Albert looked at his daughter. No, not his daughter, and felt his chest constrict. Just finishing up some work, Eve. You look nice. Mom picked the dress. Eva tugged at the expensive fabric. She says the Thompsons are important people. More important than you know, Albert muttered, then forced a smile. Tell your mother I'll be ready in 20 minutes. Once Eva left, Albert accessed his computer, pulling up files he had started collecting after Naomi's warnings. His browser history revealed months of research into Vanessa's real estate dealings, her connections to Raymond Fowler's firm, and most importantly, her manipulation of heritage property laws. A new email from Naomi popped up. Found something. Need to meet. Not at the dinner. Albert's reply was brief. Tomorrow. The vault. The Rowe family vault, hidden beneath their ancestral home, held more than just documents. It contained the key to their entire legacy. Deeds, artifacts, and most importantly, evidence of Vanessa's fraudulent use of the Rowe name in her business dealings. Standing, Albert moved to his closet, pulling out the Armani suit Vanessa had chosen. As he dressed, he could hear her voice drifting up from downstairs, talking to the children about proper behavior at the Thompsons. John, remember to compliment Mr. Fowler on his new development project, Vanessa instructed. Sadie, darling, stay close to Mrs. Fowler. She adores you. Do I have to go? John's voice carried a whine. Dad said I could work on my history project tonight. Your father, Vanessa paused, and Albert could picture her perfect smile, doesn't always understand what's best for this family. Albert's hand stilled on his tie. The casual dismissal, so familiar now, carried new weight. How many times had she undermined him to the children? How many moments had she stolen, replacing his influence with Raymond's? The drive to the Thompsons' estate was silent, broken only by the children's whispered conversations in the back seat. Vanessa sat beside him in the Mercedes, tapping away at her phone, occasionally smirking at messages Albert now knew must be from Raymond. The Thompson mansion loomed ahead, a modern monstrosity built with profits from demolished historical properties. Raymond greeted them at the door, his 6'4" frame filling the entrance. Albert. Raymond's handshake was too firm, too lingering. Vanessa tells me you've been busy with some historical preservation project. Always. Albert met Raymond's gaze steadily. Someone has to protect Bayfield's heritage from developers who tear it all down for profit. Raymond's smile faltered slightly. Progress requires sacrifice, Albert. You can't live in the past forever. No. Albert agreed, watching as Vanessa brushed past them both, her hand grazing Raymond's arm, but you can certainly learn from it. The dinner party was an exercise in restraint. Albert watched as Raymond dominated the conversation, boasting about his latest acquisitions. Vanessa hung on every word, playing the perfect business partner, while Marianne Blackwell made thinly veiled comments about successful men who understood the modern world. Albert, Raymond called from the head of the table. Vanessa mentioned your father's health is declining. Have you considered the future of the Rowe estate? Albert took a slow sip of wine, noting how Vanessa tensed slightly. The Rowe estate will remain exactly what it's always been, a testament to Bayfield's educational heritage. Surely in this market, Raymond began, but Albert cut him off. Some things aren't for sale, Raymond. Legacy, integrity, truth. These matter more than market value. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Vanessa laughed nervously, touching Raymond's arm. Albert's just passionate about history. You know how academics can be. Later that night, after putting the children to bed, Albert retreated to his study instead of joining Vanessa in their bedroom. He opened his laptop, accessing secure servers Naomi had helped him set up. A message from Mason Vasquez, their family's groundskeeper, awaited him. Sir, photographed Mrs. Rowe entering the property at 2 a.m. last Tuesday. Mr. Fowler's car parked at the gate. All documented as requested. Albert downloaded the photos, adding them to his growing file. 8 years of marriage, 3 children, countless lies, all documented now, all fueling his determination for justice. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Coming to bed. Working late, he replied, already pulling up property records and heritage classifications. Vanessa's response came quickly. Don't work too hard, darling. Some things are more important than old buildings. Albert's laugh held no humor as he typed. Yes, they are. Turning back to his computer, Albert began composing emails to key members of Bayfield's Historical Society board. Vanessa thought she was dealing with a passive academic, too wrapped up in the past to see the present. She would learn that studying history taught more than just dates and facts. It taught strategy, patience, and most importantly, how empires fell. The children's photos smiled at him from his desk. Eva's recent school picture, John's baseball team photo, Sadie's dance recital snapshot. His heart ached, but his resolve strengthened. They might not be his biologically, but he had raised them, loved them, shaped their minds and hearts. Vanessa's betrayal wouldn't change that. It would only ensure she paid the full price for her deception. Opening a new document, Albert began detailing everything he knew about Vanessa's business dealings, Raymond's development plans, and Marianne Blackwell's social connections. By the time Vanessa's empire crumbled, she would understand exactly whom she had underestimated. The old Rowe family motto, carved into the vault's door, came to mind. Veritas vincit, truth conquers. Albert allowed himself a grim smile. Vanessa was about to learn just how conquering truth could be. The call to Walter Rowe lasted exactly 3 minutes and 27 seconds. In that brief span, father and son spoke more truth than they had in years. The vault, Walter whispered, his voice weak but urgent. Get everything before she does. I know about Vanessa, Dad, about Raymond Fowler, the children. Albert's voice caught. Son, Walter's tone carried generations of Rowe strength. Our name survived the Revolution, the Depression, 2 world wars. It will survive this. The combination is Mother's birthday backwards. Albert finished. I remember. Everything you need is there. Mason knows. The line went quiet for a moment. You're my son. Albert, biology be damned with those kids. Show them what that means. Albert ended the call, already moving. The night stretched ahead, full of purpose. His laptop contained everything he had discovered about Vanessa, her fraudulent use of the Rowe name, her secret meetings with Heritage board members, her carefully orchestrated manipulation of his family's legacy. The drive to the Rowe estate took 20 minutes. Mason Vasquez, their groundskeeper of 30 years, waited at the service entrance. Mrs. Rowe called earlier, Mason reported, his weathered face grim. Asked about access to the basement storage. Said she needed to document some family artifacts. When? Tomorrow morning. She's bringing Mr. Fowler's heritage assessment team. Mason handed over a thick envelope. These are copies of everything I've documented over the past year. Times, dates, photographs. Mr. Fowler's car, late-night meetings. Everything. Albert gripped the older man's shoulder. Thank you, Mason. My father. Sleeping now. The nurse says he's comfortable. Mason produced a ring of keys. I've kept the vault entrance clear. Mrs. Blackwell. Rowe never found the secondary access through the wine cellar. The Rowe family vault occupied a section of the basement that predated the American Revolution. Albert descended the narrow stairs, Mason's flashlight beam illuminating decades of family history. The main vault door, steel reinforced and modernized in the 1950s, bore the family motto in raised letters. Veritas Vincit, Albert murmured, spinning the combination dial. 3 clicks later, the door swung open. Inside, history lived in careful organization. Shelves lined with leather-bound documents occupied one wall. Glass cases protected artifacts. A sword from the Revolutionary War, silver from the colonial era, journals dating back to Bayfield's founding. But Albert moved past these to the modern filing cabinets at the back. 3rd drawer, Mason directed. Everything about Mrs. Rowe's business dealings. Board meetings, property assessments, her attempts to access family documents. The surveillance photos are in the red folder. Albert worked, transferring essential documents to his briefcase. Property deeds showing the Rowe family's historical holdings, trust documents proving Vanessa's lack of legal claim, and most damning, evidence of her fraudulent use of the Rowe name to secure development contracts. A leather journal caught his attention. His mother's diary documenting the family's social connections dating back decades. Inside, a note fell out in his father's shaky handwriting. Albert, the truth always surfaces. Act accordingly. Sir. Mason's voice carried urgency. Headlights on the main drive. Albert closed his briefcase. Vanessa. No. Mr. Fowler's car. He's been meeting her here lately, usually after midnight. Perfect. Albert pulled out his phone, opening the camera. Time to document one last betrayal. They waited in darkness as footsteps echoed above. Vanessa's laugh drifted down, followed by Raymond's deeper voice. Through the wine cellar's ventilation shaft, their conversation carried clearly. Once the heritage assessment goes through tomorrow, Raymond was saying, we can start the redevelopment process. Albert won't be able to stop it. He won't even try, Vanessa replied. He's too buried in his books to notice what's happening around him, just like his father, living in the past while the present slips away. And the children. They barely know him. Eva already asks why she can't spend more time with you. It's natural, isn't it? A girl wanting to know her real father. Albert's grip on his phone tightened, but he kept recording. Each word, each laugh, fed the cold fury building in his chest. When the voices faded, moving upstairs, he turned to Mason. You'll testify to everything you've seen. The Rowe family gave my father work when no one else would, gave me a home, an education for my children. Mason's expression hardened. I'll tell every truth I know. Back home, Vanessa slept soundly, unaware of her husband's nocturnal activities. Albert entered his study for the last time, placing a single envelope on his desk. Inside, DNA test results proving his medical condition, documentation of Vanessa's fraud, and a short note. Truth conquers all. He packed efficiently, clothes, personal documents, his most valuable historical texts. In the children's rooms, he paused. Eva sprawled across her bed, homework scattered around her. John clutched a baseball Albert had helped him practice with. Sadie's room overflowed with books they had read together. Albert placed 3 sealed letters in his briefcase, each addressed to a child, to be delivered when the time was right. They might not share his blood, but he had made sure their futures would be secured through education trusts beyond Vanessa's reach. His Honda Civic started quietly in the garage. Behind him, the house where he'd lived a lie for 8 years disappeared into darkness. But Albert Rowe didn't look back. Ahead lay the task of dismantling Vanessa's carefully constructed facade, piece by devastating piece. The Rowe family had helped build Bayfield through revolution, reconstruction, and renewal. Now one of their own would demonstrate just how thoroughly they could tear down those who threatened their legacy. Truth conquers all, indeed. The apartment in Creekston bore little resemblance to Albert's former life. A twin bed, a desk, and a collection of historical documents spread across the walls. Maps of Bayfield's changing landscape over centuries, property records, and newspaper clippings detailing the city's architectural transformations. Each piece represented a thread in the web he was weaving around Vanessa's empire. A knock at his door interrupted his research. Gabrielle Santos stood in the hallway, laptop tucked under her arm. At 35, she carried herself with the alertness of someone used to looking over her shoulder. "Your wife made the news again," Gabrielle said, settling at his desk. She pulled up a video clip of Vanessa standing outside their former home, perfectly composed in designer morning clothes. "My husband's disappearance has devastated our family." Vanessa's voice quavered expertly in the clip. "With his father's illness weighing heavily on him, I fear Albert may not have been in his right mind. If anyone has seen him, please." Albert muted the video, his expression like stone. "She's playing her part well. Too well." Gabrielle typed rapidly, multiple screens of code reflecting in her glasses. But she made mistakes. The police report she filed. Detective Miguel Reyes is handling the case. He's been asking interesting questions about her real estate dealings. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he's not buying her grieving wife act. Gabrielle pulled up encrypted emails. He's been investigating irregularities in heritage property classifications. 3 historical buildings mysteriously lost their protected status before being demolished by Fowler Development. Albert leaned closer, studying the documents. "Can you get me a meeting with him?" "Already arranged." Gabrielle handed him a burner phone. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the Old Meadow Church. Fitting location for a revolution, don't you think?" The next morning, Albert sat in one of Bayfield's oldest landmarks, surrounded by the weight of history. Detective Miguel Reyes slid into the pew beside him, his weathered face betraying nothing. "Mr. Rowe." Reyes kept his voice low. "Interesting choice of meeting place. I teach my students that our revolution began with secret meetings in churches." Albert turned to face him. "Tell me, detective, what do you know about my wife's business practices?" "Officially, I'm investigating your disappearance. Mrs. Rowe is very concerned about your mental state." "Unofficially." Reyes pulled out a small notebook. "The timing of your disappearance coincides with several irregularities I've been tracking. Heritage properties losing protection just before Fowler Development acquires them. The Rowe name appearing on permit applications without proper authorization. Your wife's frequent meetings with Raymond Fowler during hours that don't align with normal business operations. You've been thorough. I don't like being manipulated, Mr. Rowe. Your wife tried to steer my investigation toward your father's illness, suggesting you might have become unstable. But your school records show you teaching right up until your disappearance. Your students describe you as focused, engaging, not exactly the profile of a man losing his grip." Albert's mouth curved slightly. "What do you need from me?" "Evidence. Hard proof of fraud. Something I can take to the DA that won't be dismissed as a domestic dispute." "Check the Williams property on Bradford Hill," Albert said. "Vanessa used the Rowe name to push through rezoning applications. The signatures are forged. I can prove it." Reyes nodded slowly. "That would be a start. But be careful, Mr. Rowe. Your wife isn't just playing the grieving spouse. She's been meeting with private investigators, and Raymond Fowler's security team has been asking questions in Creekston. Let them ask." Albert's voice hardened. "Vanessa thinks she married a passive academic. Time she learned what the Rowe name really stands for." Back in his apartment, Albert reviewed Gabrielle's latest findings. Vanessa's business emails revealed an aggressive push to acquire more historical properties, with Raymond's firm already drawing up plans for luxury condominiums. They plan to replace centuries of Bayfield history. "They're moving faster than expected," Gabrielle noted, highlighting key documents. "Vanessa's scheduled meetings with Heritage Board members next week. She's using your disappearance to gain sympathy, painting herself as a woman forced to take control of family business matters in a crisis. She always knew how to play the victim." Albert pulled up property records. "What about the children?" Gabrielle's expression softened. Eva's been asking questions at school. Her teachers report she's withdrawn, spending lunch periods researching family genetics. John got into a fight, defending you when another student repeated rumors about mental illness. Sadie's been carrying your old history books to class. Albert's hand stilled over the keyboard. The anger that had driven him since discovering Vanessa's betrayal crystallized into something colder, more focused. They might not share my blood, but they're still my kids, Gabriel. Vanessa's not taking that from me. She's pushing for a conservatorship over Walter and sole guardianship of the children, Gabriel warned. She's building a narrative that you abandoned them, that you're mentally unfit. Then we counter with truth. Albert turned to the wall of evidence. Every meeting, every bribe, every forged signature. She wants to fight dirty. So be it. A new email alert popped up on Gabriel's screen. Albert, she's scheduled a press conference. She's going to announce plans to establish a mental health foundation in your name, using your disappearance as a publicity campaign. Albert's laugh held no humor. She always did excel at turning tragedy into opportunity. He turned back to the wall of documents, each piece representing a step in Vanessa's downfall. Time to remind her why the old families of Bayfield survived for centuries. We know how to fight dirty, too. Amanda Fowler's penthouse overlooked Bayfield Harbor, the view paid for with her divorce settlement from Raymond. She poured 2 glasses of wine, her manicured nails matching the expensive Cabernet. Raymond always underestimated the women in his life, she mused, handing Albert a glass. He thought money could buy silence. Vanessa made the same mistake. Tell me about their relationship, Albert prompted, noting how Amanda's practiced socialite demeanor slipped when she mentioned her ex-husband. It started at Hathaway University. Vanessa was studying real estate development. Raymond was the star athlete everyone wanted to marry. When he chose me instead, Amanda's laugh was sharp. Vanessa never forgave either of us. She dated other men, built her career, but she always kept tabs on Raymond. And now she thinks she's won. Raymond's empire, your family's social standing. It's all part of her perfect revenge story. Amanda retrieved a USB drive from her desk. But Raymond has a habit of recording his business meetings. Insurance, he calls it. These are copies of conversations between him and Vanessa going back 5 years. Pay attention to the Heritage Heights project. They discuss using the row name to bypass preservation laws. Albert pocketed the drive. Why help me? Because Raymond destroyed my family to be with Vanessa. Because he uses our children as props when it suits his image, then sends them away to boarding school. Amanda's polished veneer cracked. Because men like Raymond and women like Vanessa think they can take whatever they want without consequences. A knock interrupted them. Gordon Fowler, Raymond's father, entered the room. At 75, he carried the weight of his family's legacy in his bearing. Albert. Gordon's handshake was firm. I've been following Vanessa's press appearances. Quite the performance. She learned from the best, Amanda noted dryly. Your son's talent for public manipulation had to come from somewhere. Gordon accepted the implied criticism with a nod. I taught Raymond everything about business, but somewhere he forgot the most important lesson. Legacy isn't just about money. When he began working with Vanessa to destroy historical properties, he shook his head. The Fowler name used to stand for something in Bayfield. It still can, Albert said. Help me stop them. I have records. Gordon settled into an armchair. Development plans they tried to hide from me. Heritage board members they've bribed. Properties they've targeted for destruction. I kept everything, hoping Raymond would remember who he used to be. Amanda pulled up emails on her laptop. Vanessa scheduled a major presentation next week. Heritage board, potential investors, the press, all there to witness her grand vision for modernizing Bayfield's historical districts. Using my family's name to destroy my family's legacy, Albert's voice was cold. What else? She's pushing to have your father declared mentally incompetent, Gordon revealed. Raymond's lawyers are preparing documents claiming Walter Rowe is unfit to manage the estate. They want Vanessa appointed as conservator. Albert's grip tightened on his wine glass. My father is dying of cancer. His mind is as sharp as ever. They're counting on public sympathy, Amanda explained. Poor Vanessa, dealing with a mentally ill husband and an incapacitated father-in-law. The perfect narrative to justify taking control of the Rowe properties. She won't succeed. Albert pulled out his phone, showing them Detective Rice's latest message. The police are building a fraud case, but I need something more personal. Amanda's smile turned predatory. Like proof that Raymond's been embezzling from his own company, recordings of him admitting to bribing officials, or perhaps evidence that he and Vanessa systematically targeted historical properties owned by old Bayfield families. All of it. Albert's expression matched hers. Vanessa wanted to use my family's name. Let's show her exactly what that means. They worked late into the night, piecing together evidence. Gordon provided internal Fowler development documents showing systematic fraud. Amanda contributed recordings and emails proving the affair had never ended, even during her marriage to Raymond. Each piece added to the weight of evidence Detective Rice was building. There's one more thing, Gordon said as Albert prepared to leave. Raymond's been moving money offshore. Vanessa's name is on the accounts. They're preparing for something big. The Rowe estate, Albert realized. They're planning to move fast once they get control. Not just the estate. Amanda pulled up property records. They'd been quietly buying land around historical sites all over Bayfield. Once they break the preservation laws using your family's influence, they'll destroy centuries of history for luxury condos. Albert's voice was ice. Not going to happen. Back in his apartment, Gabriel was waiting with news. Vanessa's been meeting with a PR firm. They're planning a major campaign. Preserving Bayfield's future, or some nonsense. She's positioning herself as a visionary bridging old and new Bayfield. She wants to play with heritage. Let's give her a history lesson, Albert said. Get me everything you can on the Heritage Board members. Everyone has secrets they'd rather keep buried. Gabriel's fingers flew over her keyboard, already on it. And then she added, Walter's nurse called. Vanessa tried to visit him today, bringing a team of doctors for a competency evaluation. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Albert Rowe, once just a dedicated teacher, felt the weight of centuries of Rowe history settling on his shoulders. Send everything to Rice, he ordered. It's time Bayfield remembered why the old families ruled this city for centuries. We didn't survive by being nice. The coffee shop across from Bayfield Central High provided a perfect vantage point. Albert sat in a corner booth, baseball cap pulled low, watching as Eva Rowe navigated the morning crowd. At 13, she moved with Vanessa's confidence, but showed signs of uncertainty her mother would never display. Marta Vargas, the children's former nanny, slid into the booth opposite him. Her dark eyes held a mixture of sympathy and determination. Eva asks about you, Marta said without preamble. She found the medical records in Vanessa's office. She's smart. That one. Started researching genetic inheritance patterns. Albert's hands tightened around his coffee cup. Vanessa's response. Sent her to a therapist. Claimed you filled the children's heads with lies before you left. Marta's expression hardened. But Eva's not buying it. She remembers too much. The way Raymond always showed up at her sports events, how Vanessa pushed her to spend time with him. John, Albert asked quietly. Acting out. Got suspended last week for fighting. Some kid repeated rumors about you having a mental breakdown. Marta pulled out her phone, showing Albert photos. But look what he keeps in his backpack. The images showed John's school materials. Among them were Albert's old history books, the margins filled with notes they had made together studying Revolution battles. And Sadie. Marta sighed. She misses you most openly. Vanessa's response was to hire a new nanny and enroll Sadie in extra activities. That child spends more time with tutors and coaches than her mother. She keeps asking why you aren't there to read her bedtime stories. A new voice joined their conversation. Mr. Rowe. Albert looked up to see Dr. Susan Zhao, Eva's school counselor, approaching their booth. She sat without waiting for an invitation. Eva's been asking questions in our sessions, Dr. Zhao said. Specific questions about DNA testing, about legal definitions of parenthood. She's processing things in her own way. And Vanessa's response: attempted to have me removed as Eva's counselor. When that failed, she tried to restrict what we could discuss. Dr. Zhao's professional demeanor cracked slightly. I've documented everything. The attempts at manipulation, the way she's using the children's emotional struggles to support her narrative about you. Albert absorbed the information, his academic's mind cataloging each detail, while his heart ached for the children caught in Vanessa's web. Eva's science project is next week, Dr. Zhao mentioned. She chose to research genetic inheritance patterns. Vanessa tried to get her to change topics, but Eva refused. Albert's slight smile held no warmth. She has her mother's determination, but she's using it to find truth rather than hide it. As they prepared to leave, Marta touched Albert's arm. Vanessa's hired a new nanny. Young girl, seems overwhelmed. The children aren't taking it well. Tell me, Albert said, his voice tight. Sadie cries at bedtime, asks for the stories you used to read. John refuses to let the new nanny help with homework, says only you understand how he thinks. Eva. Marta paused. Eva's become the protector. She sits with Sadie until she falls asleep, helps John with his assignments, tries to fill the gap you left. Vanessa's response: increase therapy sessions, keep pushing them to spend time with Raymond. Last weekend, she forced them to attend a Fowler family brunch. Eva came home and spent hours going through old Rowe family albums. She's trying to understand her place in it all, Dr. Zhao added softly. Albert pulled out 3 envelopes from his briefcase. Can you make sure these reach them when the time is right? Dr. Zhao examined the sealed letters. You've established trust funds for them. Educational trusts, Albert corrected. Protected from both Vanessa and Raymond. They may not be mine by blood, but their futures are secured. Blood isn't everything, Marta said softly. Those children know who really cared for them. They spent the next hour reviewing Marta's documentation, Dr. Zhao adding her professional observations about the children's emotional states. Each piece added to Albert's understanding of how deeply Vanessa's manipulations had affected them. Eva's science project is her way of seeking truth, Dr. Zhao explained. John's fights come from defending you. Sadie's tears are for the father she knew. Back in his apartment, Albert reviewed notes from the meeting. Gabrielle was already typing rapidly at her laptop, adding Marta's documentation to their growing body of evidence. Vanessa's getting sloppy, Gabrielle observed. She filed a motion to have herself appointed the children's sole guardian, citing your abandonment. But she didn't consider that Eva's old enough to speak to a judge. If Eva reveals what she's discovered about Raymond, Vanessa won't let it get that far. Albert cut in. She'll find a way to silence Eva, probably send her to boarding school, like Raymond did with his other children. His phone buzzed, a message from Detective Rice. Walter Rowe's doctor reported attempted interference with his medical care. V tried to have new physicians assigned, documented everything. Albert's expression turned grim. Vanessa was attacking on all fronts, his father, the children, his reputation. She had taken his family name, used his position in Bayfield society, and now thought she could erase him from his children's lives. Send everything to Ray Morales, he instructed Gabrielle, referring to his federal judge uncle. The trust documents, Marta's records, Dr. Zhao's observations. It's time we show Vanessa what the Rowe family does to those who betray us. Gabrielle nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The Heritage Board meeting is in 3 days. Vanessa's planning to use it to announce her new role as protector of the Rowe legacy. Perfect timing, Albert said, turning to the wall of evidence they had accumulated. Let her make her grand announcement. By the time we're done, the only thing she'll be protecting is herself. The Heritage Board conference room buzzed with anticipation. Vanessa Montgomery Rowe stood at the podium, resplendent in designer black, playing her role of grieving wife turned determined businesswoman to perfection. Bayfield's future demands vision. She declared to the assembled board members and press, "We can't let outdated preservation laws stifle progress." The Rowe family has always understood the balance between heritage and development. In the back of the room, Jenna Ward, junior partner at Vanessa's firm, clutched a manila envelope beneath her desk. 6 years of working under Vanessa had taught her to mask her emotions, but today her hands trembled slightly. Her phone buzzed. A message from Albert Rowe. "Now." Jenna stood, her voice cutting through Vanessa's practiced speech. "I have documents proving systematic fraud in heritage property classifications." Vanessa's perfect composure cracked for just a moment. "Jenna, this isn't the appropriate. I have copies of falsified applications." Jenna continued, distributing papers to board members, forged signatures using the Rowe name, bribes to officials, deliberate misclassification of protected properties. Raymond Fowler rose from his seat in the front row. "These accusations are baseless." "Are they?" Detective Miguel Reyes stepped into the room, badge displayed. "The police department has been investigating these allegations for months. Ms. Ward has provided crucial evidence of criminal fraud." Cameras flashed as Vanessa gripped the podium. "This is a personal vendetta. My mentally unstable husband is perfectly sane." Ray Morales' authoritative voice rang out as Albert's federal judge uncle entered. "And the Rowe Family Trust has filed a civil suit against both Vanessa Montgomery Rowe and Fowler Development for fraudulent use of the family name." The conference room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions as board members pored over Jenna's documents. Through it all, Vanessa maintained her pose, but her eyes darted between exits like a trapped animal. "Mrs. Rowe," a reporter called out, "how do you respond to allegations that you married Albert, specifically to access his family's influence in historical preservation circles?" Before Vanessa could respond, Mary Ann Blackwell burst into the room. "This is absurd. My daughter has worked tirelessly to destroy." Albert's voice cut through the chaos as he stepped into view. The room fell silent. Centuries of history for profit. Vanessa's mask slipped entirely. "Albert, how dare you? How dare I?" Albert's laugh held no warmth. "You married me for my name, fathered children by another man while gaslighting me about my medical condition, and planned to destroy my family's legacy. The question, Vanessa, is how dare you? You abandoned your family." Vanessa countered, playing to the cameras. "Left 3 children, who aren't mine biologically." Albert cut in. "Though you knew that all along, didn't you? Just like you knew about the offshore accounts, the bribes, the fraudulent permits. Detective Rice has quite a file on your activities." Raymond Fowler moved to intercept Albert, but April Fowler appeared at his side. "Sit down, Raymond, or shall we discuss the recordings I provided to your board of directors?" Gordon Fowler stepped forward next, facing his son. "The Fowler Development Board meets this afternoon. Fraud allegations against the CEO should make for an interesting discussion." Vanessa's composure crumbled completely. "This is a conspiracy." "No," Jenna Ward interrupted, still distributing documents. "This is evidence. Years of systematic fraud, all documented. Property classifications altered, heritage protections stripped, historical buildings demolished for profit." Ray Morales addressed the Heritage Board directly. "My firm has prepared a comprehensive report detailing violations of preservation laws. The Rowe Family Trust demands immediate cessation of all development projects using our name." Reporters scribbled frantically as Vanessa's carefully constructed world imploded. "Mrs. Rowe," one called out, "comment on the fraud charges." "Mr. Rowe, will you press charges against your wife for her manipulation of heritage classifications?" Albert faced the cameras directly. "The Rowe family has protected Bayfield's historical legacy for generations. We will continue to do so against any threat, personal or professional." Officers led Vanessa and Raymond away, while Marianne Blackwell attempted one final defense. This is a personal matter that's been blown out of proportion. Personal. Albert's voice could have frozen fire. You helped orchestrate your daughter's marriage to me, knowing she planned to destroy my family's legacy. Tell me, Marianne, how's your social calendar looking these days? I hear invitations have been scarce since word of your involvement spread. The Heritage Board chairman called for order. In light of these revelations, all projects involving Rowe family properties are suspended pending investigation. Mr. Rowe, the board extends its deepest apologies for any role we played in this fraud. Albert nodded once, then turned to leave. He had achieved what he came for. Vanessa's empire was crumbling, and with it, her plans for the Rowe estate. But his work wasn't finished. The reckoning had only begun. Back in his Creekston apartment, Gabriel monitored the fallout on multiple screens. Vanessa's being eviscerated in the press. Raymond's board of directors has called an emergency meeting. The Heritage Board is reviewing years of approved projects. And the children? Albert asked quietly. Safe at school. Dr. Zhao is with Eva, ready to handle any fallout. Marta is watching over John and Seti. Albert studied the wall of evidence that had brought down Vanessa's schemes. Make sure Jenna Ward is protected. Vanessa will look for revenge once the shock wears off. Already handled, Gabriel assured him. Ray Morels offered her a position. She'll be key in untangling the fraudulent property deals. Albert's phone buzzed. An incoming message from Walter Rowe. Well done, son. The Rowe name stands for something again. The next phase would require precision. Vanessa and Raymond faced criminal charges, but Albert wasn't finished. 8 years of lies demanded more than just legal justice. The Rowe family had survived centuries in Bayfield by knowing when to strike hard and when to strike deeper. Send everything to the Historical Society boards in New York and Chicago, he instructed Gabriel. Vanessa had development plans there too. Let's make sure she has nowhere to rebuild. The Rowe legacy would be preserved, not just in Bayfield, but wherever Vanessa had sought to destroy history for profit. Albert Rowe, the teacher she dismissed as weak, had taught her the most important lesson of all. That some histories can't be erased, some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some names carry a power that can't be bought. Walter Rowe died on a Tuesday morning, surrounded by family. His son Albert, daughter Naomi, and Mason Vasquez, who had served the Rowe household longer than some relatives had lived. Vanessa, learning of his death through her lawyers, attempted to rush to the estate with her team of doctors and legal advisors. They found the gates locked, the property under guard. This is outrageous. Vanessa's lawyer blustered to the security team. Mrs. Rowe has every right. Mrs. Rowe has no rights here. Ray Morales stepped out of the house. The estate passed into a historical trust yesterday. Walter Rowe's final act as a lucid, competent adult, witnessed by myself and 2 other judges. Vanessa pushed forward. I demand. You demand nothing. Albert emerged from the shadows of the portico. Your demands died with your lies, Vanessa. The Rowe estate is now the Walter Rowe Museum of Educational Heritage, a fitting legacy for a family that valued knowledge over profit. Marianne Blackwell appeared behind her daughter. We'll challenge this in court. Walter wasn't competent. 3 separate medical evaluations prove otherwise. Naomi countered, holding up documentation, conducted by independent physicians, videotaped, and witnessed by legal experts. Would you like to explain to a judge why you tried to have unauthorized doctors declare him incompetent? Vanessa's perfect makeup couldn't hide her rising panic. The children need stability. Albert, think about them. I have. His voice carried across the lawn. Their educational trusts are secure. Their futures protected from your schemes and Raymond's influence. That's what real parental love looks like, Vanessa. Protection without possession. Marianne tried one last approach. The Blackwell family name means nothing compared to the integrity of the Rowe legacy. Albert finished. You taught Vanessa to value appearance over substance, Marianne. That lesson ends here. The gathered press captured it all. Vanessa's desperation, Marianne's social downfall, the Rowe family's united stand against their manipulations. By nightfall, Bayfield society would discuss nothing else. Inside his father's study, Albert reviewed the museum plans with Ray Morales and Naomi. The Rowe estate would become a center for historical education, preserving not just artifacts but the principles Walter Rowe had lived by. Vanessa's legal team will fight this, Naomi warned. Let them, Albert replied. The Rowe family didn't survive centuries in Bayfield by backing down from fights. Vanessa wanted to play with heritage. She's about to learn what real legacy means. The Rowe estate stood unchanged as Vanessa's carefully constructed world crumbled around it. Walter Rowe's legacy, nearly stolen by greed, would instead become a monument to the principles he had lived by: education, preservation, and the unyielding strength of truth. Transformation of the Rowe estate into a museum happened with the same dedication to detail that had brought down Vanessa's empire. Albert surveyed the completed renovation from his father's, now his, office, where generations of Rowe men had protected Bayfield's heritage. Gabriel Santos worked at a desk near his, coordinating final security measures. Their relationship, forged in the shadow war against Vanessa, had evolved into something neither had expected. Final numbers from the fraud investigation, she reported. Vanessa's firm faces multiple criminal charges. Raymond's board voted him out this morning, and their development empire is finished. The children. Eva's presentation on genetic inheritance won first prize in the science fair, Gabriel said with a slight smile. John's behavioral issues have improved since starting sessions with Dr. Zhao. Sadie's been reading historical stories to her class, just like you used to do with her. A knock at the door interrupted them. Gordon Fowler entered, looking older but unburdened. The grandchildren's trust is secured. Raymond can't touch it, even if he manages to avoid jail time. Thank you. Albert nodded. They deserve a future free from their parents' schemes. Speaking of schemes, Gabriel interjected, Marianne Blackwell's attempt to re-enter Bayfield society isn't going well. 3 more charity boards requested her resignation this morning. Gordon's expression hardened. She orchestrated this whole disaster. Vanessa was ambitious, but Marianne taught her to value social position above all else. They taught each other, Albert corrected, scanning museum blueprints. Now they can support each other through social exile. Amanda Fowler arrived with updates on Raymond's legal troubles. The SEC investigation is expanding. Offshore accounts, fraudulent permits, bribes. He's facing serious prison time. Vanessa's trying to distance herself, but Jenna Ward's evidence ties her to everything. The DA is offering a deal, but it still means jail time. Albert studied the museum layout. The Walter Rowe Museum of Educational Heritage would open next month, dedicated to preserving not just artifacts, but the principles of integrity his father had embodied. The children want to attend the opening, Gabriel mentioned softly. They should, Albert decided. It's their heritage too, regardless of biology. The Rowe legacy is about more than blood. The museum's centerpiece, the Walter Rowe Memorial Library, housed centuries of documents his father had protected. Here, future generations would learn the true meaning of legacy, not property values or social status, but preservation of principles worth defending. Vanessa's empire had fallen. Raymond's development schemes had crumbled. Marianne's social influence had evaporated. But the Rowe family legacy, tested by betrayal, had emerged stronger. Albert Rowe stood in his father's office, now the museum director's study, surrounded by the history he had fought to protect. Gabriel worked nearby, their shared battle having forged a bond built on trust rather than deception. Eva, John, and Sadie would grow up understanding the difference between appearance and substance, between social position and true character. Vanessa's betrayal had taught them that family isn't defined by blood, but by values passed down through generations. The Rowe family motto, Veritas Vincit, stood carved above the museum entrance, a testament to the power of truth over deception. Albert had proven that legacy wasn't just inherited, it was earned through action and preserved through unwavering principle. Vanessa and Raymond's trials made headlines, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of evidence. Bayfield society, which had once embraced Vanessa's charm, now viewed her fall as a cautionary tale. Eva, now 14, spent afternoons in the museum's research library, discovering her place in the Rowe legacy through actions rather than blood. John transformed his anger into passionate debates about historical preservation in class. Sadie started a children's reading group, sharing the stories Albert had once read to her with a new generation. "You've built something remarkable here," Gabriel said one evening, reviewing security protocols for the museum's expanding collection. "Not just the museum. You've redefined what the Rowe name means." "We built it," Albert corrected, acknowledging her role in bringing down Vanessa's schemes. Their relationship, founded on shared values rather than social climbing, proved that some partnerships strengthened rather than betrayed. Gordon Fowler became a regular visitor, working to ensure his grandchildren understood their dual heritage, mistakes to avoid from the Fowler line, and principles to embrace from the Rowe tradition. His efforts to make amends for his son's actions showed the children that redemption was possible through genuine change. April Fowler collaborated on the museum's educational programs, her experience with Raymond's betrayal fueling her dedication to teaching that truth outweighs appearance. Her recordings, which had helped bring down Raymond's empire, became part of a larger lesson on corporate responsibility and historical preservation. The final blow to Vanessa's hopes came when she attempted to challenge the educational trusts Albert had established for the children. The courts, presented with evidence of her manipulation and neglect, not only upheld the trusts but granted Albert significant input into the children's education despite the lack of biological connection. "Biology doesn't define family," the judge stated. "Character does." Marianne Blackwell's social decline completed the collapse of the facade she had helped Vanessa construct. Their scheme to use the Rowe name for profit had instead taught Bayfield a lasting lesson about substance over appearance. As Albert closed his office that evening, he passed the museum's newest exhibit, a timeline of Bayfield's historical families, including the recent Rowe triumph over those who would destroy heritage for profit. The display ended with a quote from Walter Rowe: "Legacy lives not in what we claim, but in what we protect." Vanessa's betrayal had tested the Rowe family's strength. Albert's response had proven that strength wasn't measured in social status or property values, but in the unwavering defense of principles worth preserving. The children, though not Rowe by blood, would grow up understanding this truth, that family, like legacy, is built through choice and character rather than mere circumstance. The Rowe name endured, not as a tool for social climbers, but as a symbol of preservation, education, and the enduring power of truth. Albert's victory wasn't just in defeating Vanessa's schemes, it was in showing that some legacies grow stronger when tested, some betrayals lead to better futures, and some families are forged in principle rather than blood. 10 years later, the Walter Rowe Museum of Educational Heritage had grown beyond its original scope, expanding to 3 additional historical properties across Bayfield. Albert Rowe, now approaching 50, stood in his office reviewing the latest acquisition, a colonial-era schoolhouse saved from developers who had tried to bypass preservation laws. "Dad," Eva Rose Santos's voice carried through the hallway. At 23, she had grown into a formidable young woman, having just completed her master's degree in historical preservation at Hathaway University. "The board approved our proposal for the children's education wing." Albert looked up from the blueprints, pride evident in his expression. Eva had chosen to take both the Rowe and Santos names after his marriage to Gabriel 5 years ago, a decision that spoke volumes about where her loyalties lay. "Show me the plans," he said, clearing space on his desk. Eva spread out detailed drawings. "We're converting the East Wing into interactive exhibits so kids can experience different historical periods and understand why preservation matters." Sadie's already volunteered to run the storytelling sessions. At 17, Sadie had inherited Albert's passion for teaching. She spent weekends at the museum, sharing historical stories with visiting children, her natural gift for narrative bringing Bayfield's past to life. John called. Eva continued. He's flying in next week. His law firm is handling another case against developers trying to demolish historical properties in Chicago. Says he's using the Roe case as precedent. Albert nodded, remembering how John, now 20, had channeled his teenage anger into a determination to protect other families from schemes like Vanessa's. He had earned a scholarship to Yale Law School, specializing in preservation law and corporate fraud. Gabrielle Santos, now Gabrielle Santos Roe, entered, her cybersecurity expertise having evolved into overseeing digital preservation projects for historical documents. Vanessa's parole hearing is next month, she reported, her expression grim. Raymond died in prison last year, but she's trying to rebuild some kind of life. Any contact attempts? Albert asked, his voice carrying the same steel it had developed during his war with Vanessa. She sent letters to the children. All three returned them unopened. Gabrielle pulled up security footage on her tablet. Marianne Blackwell was spotted near the museum yesterday. Security escorted her out. The Montgomery Fowler scandal had become a Hathaway Business School case study in corporate fraud and social manipulation. Vanessa's conviction carried a 15-year sentence, though she served only 12. Raymond received 20 years, but died of heart failure in his 8th year of imprisonment. Marianne, never charged criminally, had been thoroughly exiled from Bayfield society. April Fowler was on video call, updating them on the Thompson, now Fowler, family trust for the children. She had remarried 5 years after Raymond's conviction, finding happiness with a federal judge who shared her commitment to corporate accountability. Gordon Fowler's health is failing, April reported. He's updated his will to include provisions for historical preservation projects, trying to balance out the damage Raymond did to Bayfield's heritage. Gordon had become a regular presence at the museum, his relationship with his grandchildren strengthening as he helped them understand the importance of learning from past mistakes. His efforts to restore the Fowler name's reputation focused on supporting preservation rather than destruction. Late afternoon brought a visit from Jenna Ward, now a senior partner at Ray Morrell's firm. Her whistleblower testimony had launched her legal career, specializing in corporate fraud. Just finished another case against developers manipulating heritage laws, she reported proudly. The judge cited the Roe precedent. Vanessa's schemes ended up strengthening preservation legislation nationwide. Detective Reyes, recently retired from the Bayfield PD, joined them as well. His investigation of Vanessa had led to a specialized unit focusing on historical property fraud. Vanessa's been making inquiries about Bayfield real estate again, he warned. Nothing direct, but she's reached out to former contacts. She won't find any allies here, Albert stated firmly. The Roe name stands for preservation now, not profit. As evening fell, Albert reviewed photos on his desk. Eva at her university graduation, John arguing his first preservation case, Sadie leading museum tours, Gabrielle working on digital archives. Their marriage had combined a professional partnership with personal understanding. The Roe legacy, tested by betrayal, had emerged stronger through defending what mattered most. A new photo showed the entire extended family at last year's holiday gathering. Eva, John, and Sadie, confident in their roles. Gabrielle by Albert's side. April Fowler and her new husband. Gordon in his wheelchair. Marta Vargas and her family. Jenna Ward. Detective Rice. All connected not by blood, but by their stand against Vanessa's destruction. Another photo. Eva's engagement announcement. She had met her fiancé through preservation work, forming a foundation for their relationship based on shared commitment to protecting heritage. The Roe name carries weight again, Gabrielle observed, joining him at the window. But not the way Vanessa planned. Albert nodded, watching visitors explore the museum grounds that Vanessa once planned to destroy. The Roe legacy lived in Eva's dedication to preservation, John's legal battles against fraud, Sadie's talent for storytelling. It lived in Gabriel's partnership, in the allies who helped expose the truth, and in the strength that came from defending principles rather than profit. Vanessa's betrayal had tested the Rowe family's foundation, but their response had transformed a private tragedy into a public triumph, strengthening not just one family's legacy, but an entire city's commitment to preserving its heritage. The museum stood as a testament to Walter Rowe's wisdom. Legacy lives not in what we claim, but in what we protect. The children, though not Albert's by blood, had proven themselves Rowe's in every way that mattered. They carried forward a legacy strengthened rather than broken by its greatest test. Gabriel squeezed Albert's hand as they left. Their shared battle had built a foundation for something genuine. Ready to go home. Albert nodded, knowing that home wasn't the mansion Vanessa had coveted, but the principles they had fought to protect. The Rowe legacy would continue, enriched by the very crisis that had threatened it, guided by the understanding that true wealth lay not in what people owned, but in what they dared to defend. Truth had conquered all, just as the family motto promised. And in that truth, the Rowe legacy flourished, not through Vanessa's grand schemes, but through the quiet strength of those who understood that some things are worth fighting for. In the end, Vanessa's betrayal had given the Rowe family its greatest gift, proof that legacy lived not in social status or property deeds, but in the principles people chose to protect, the truths they dared to defend, and the family they built through choice rather than chance. The Rowe name endured as a testament to the enduring power of truth over deception, substance over appearance, and principle over profit. Albert's true victory wasn't just in defeating Vanessa's schemes. It was in showing that some legacies grow stronger when tested, some betrayals lead to better futures, and some families are forged in principle rather than blood.